Honestly, y'all, I'm trying to find a second video to watch for y'all. Fuck, we're gonna do this first. Okay, y'all. Today we have not the newest chapter of One Piece. I'm gonna look it up and I'll probably have it on the screen. I will have it on the screen. I'll have it on the screen which chapter this is. You to whoever, you to me later, or me later. It in this video. If you know there's a difference in the video, I don't know what to tell you. And I am extremely full of food right now. Oh, Jesus Christ. So, let's go ahead and get this video. And I know I said 1180 was a good time to stop. I'm gonna look at this because before I press record on this video, I had a previous video. It was reviewing or watching Grandline review talk about Usopp. I thought it was a chapter. I thought he was talking about Usopp in that chapter, talking about that theory with Usopp's hammer. And I've been avoiding spoilers for so long. I don't even know what they. All I remember last thing I remember. I think they said Gonko was a princess, and maybe Brook was her knight. I think, and I got spoiled on what the actual queen. I think that's the queen and king, what they look like, but I can't remember. So that's about it. That's how much I've been spoiled on. I've been avoiding spoilers as much as I can, and this is another different angle and the years and years of reactions. I'm not gonna say years. The months I've been doing reactions. I got a couple of live streams, maybe like 2 on here. I probably should have got a game while I had a chance. I've just been bullshit. No, that's a whole other story. I'm full of fucking food. So once I get into a state, I'm into it. Is mic on? Yeah. You would not believe how many videos I've recorded and thrown away because I forgot the mic was off. I'm not even kidding.
In every direction, and somehow this chapter still found room to set up one of the biggest character moments that we have been anticipating since long before this channel even existed, which is a long time ago. But this chapter wastes no time picking up where 1186 left off, with Luffy having smacked.
I think Grandline review started off on
genuine
TikTok.
hit, by the way. Emu's face is still contorting a week later, but in response to this rather rude gesture from Luffy, Emu decides to punish.
I thought Grandline
these two sentient black flames.
And here's what I love about me having my reaction set up. I'm going back and watch people that I've watched, like Grandline review. I don't think I discovered him on TikTok. I discovered him by Instagram, and that's also how I found out about One Piece, or how I got back into One Piece. I've said this a lot in the past for recordings, but probably not been as much for y'all. But how I came back to One Piece. Basically, one day I'm scrolling through Instagram. I'm on the floor scrolling through Instagram, and I see this picture of Robin. I hope I put it on the screen later. Please put it on the screen later. I saw this picture of Robin looking at Luffy's poster and her making that face. And I was like, what the fuck happened to Robin? I said, what the fuck happened to One Piece? I started looking through the comments, and then I forgot who said this first. A comment said that this is new animation, and they're on the land of Wano. And I was like, what the fuck is Wano? Because for me, my gap of... I watched One Piece on Toonami. I think it came on Sunday. I think it came on Saturday. And I think the last episode of One Piece I saw on Toonami was when they was in the Water 7 arc. When they were in Water 7. Remember the last episode was when they had left on the ship and they brought Usopp back. That was the last episode I watched on Toonami. After that, I'm going to say, yeah, I dropped it. I dropped One Piece because it stopped coming on Toonami. Well, I wouldn't say it stopped coming on Toonami. I more like start watching other shows like Blue Exorcist, Black Lagoon, Michiko and Hatchin. I watched all of them on Toonami instead of One Piece. Then I came back to One Piece doing the Instagram like I said earlier. Then I said, okay, they're in Wano. What's Wano like? So then I went and found Grandline Review. In Grandline Review, he has this playlist where it says catch up with One Piece. That's how I caught up with One Piece. But the thing is, I'll be one of those people that say, oh, you just caught up, you just skipped, you just fast tracked everything. Me, even though I went with Grandline Review and this to them explaining like what's happening right now, I also went out and found videos about the whole history, everything like that. I can't remember everything, but I remember some things. But I can't. I got to see the face of the character to probably remember their name. I'm at that point. Oh my god. The food. I guess the food is trying to digest. One Piece. Yes. And when it. Okay, I'm back now. Oh, it's about 10 minutes. Okay. But after I did all that, I finally started watching One Piece again. And I started around, I'm gonna say exactly when they got separated. Yeah, I think exactly when they got separated before in. That's when I kind of started going in and out watching it. It was when No. Yes. No. Around that, I think I started coming back to it. But I know I really started watching it when Luffy was in jail. When Luffy was in Kaido's prison. That's when I really started watching it. Because I remember at that point, it's going to sound crazy, y'all. During that point, I fell asleep watching it. I really did. Jesus Christ. The food is going down. I really did start watching it. And I remember, wow. Y'all remember when they first showed Gear 5? I remember where I was. I was in church. I was in this new church I was going to over there in Brookstown. And after this church, no, it was either before or after. I think it was after. I sat down. No, it was before. I sat down on the. I was sitting down on the couch, looking. Had my phone up. I was just watching. I was watching it, and then I got to see Gear 5. Then after that, I think I was getting ready to go to church. I went to church and that whole shebang. And I've been One Piece since. I guess I'm gonna just say it for right now until when it arrived with Wano. Before that, I stopped at Water 7. That's my complete history of remembering One Piece.
And I love these little guys at the moment. This is my personal favorite part of whatever Imu's powers are, because they mimic Big Mom's soul abilities, which I love ever so much. Imu being able to bring things to life is a lot of fun, because even if these objects and or substances are evil, they're still incredibly adorable. And I guess that Imu gave his black flames a command, but he's not the one controlling them, which is fascinating. The flames, they organize amongst themselves to locate Loki's initial wound from when Imu stabbed him with a Nemesis sword, and it looks like these little guys are used for targeting, these magical flamey aimbots, if you will, so that Imu can stab Loki with another long-range sword attack in the same wound. Flammy. And this attack also follows the same pattern as Imu's other techniques to date, which is that
so they're fighting.
is in kanji, but the furigana accompanying the kanji is an English word. So that word in this case is stigma, suteguma. However, the actual kanji that's being used would traditionally be pronounced as onmakken.
I love how he translates things.
A vengeful demon sword or sword of demonic malice, or something bad like that. And I really like what Oda did with this technique in particular. The stigma is...
That snap was a quick and a motherfucking hurry. The reason why y'all probably hear me snapping so much is literally because I'm in a whole different house, so I have to cut it right apart before my family comes through. So yeah.
Appropriate is stigma. It is a mark, and Loki, he was marked by the Black Flames. But also, Loki himself is or was a stigma of Elbaf. Initially due to the eyes that he was born with, and then all of the curses that happened after he was born, and finally by killing King Harold. Loki, he was a dark mark stained into Elbaf itself. A stigma of giant society. So it's very rude for Imu to be using this to dismiss Loki from the fight. Especially since, mate, the dude has now been stabbed 5 times, is it? 3 times by Shamrock's Kerberos blade and twice by Imu. The latter 2 again being in the same spot. Which sends Loki, a man who I shall remind you is as big as Oz, flying across the island and conveniently landing up against the Gunko Cube. And along with Loki being sent flying, Ragnar is sent
Gunko
I
Cube?
think
What
accidentally knocks the Gunko Cube, which is what causes it to start melting. Ragnar is the one who froze Gunko in the first place, and it was said to be the only one who could unfreeze the ice. So I was expecting Ragnar to be the solution to our Shuri problem, but I think I was expecting the solution to be a bit more intentional than what happened. Although because of this, you could actually argue that Imu was the one responsible for freeing Shuri. If he hadn't used this attack against Loki, then Ragnar wouldn't have accidentally smacked the ice. And Shuri being free is probably going to end up being integral in the climax of Elbaf in some way. I doubt we're getting her out of the cube just to have her sit on the sidelines and look on.
Damn, she's still trapped in that
fucking
fucking cube.
About Shuri and her eyes that may lead to Imu's ultimate defeat on the island. As for Loki, he's in a pretty bad way at the moment, and as much as this chapter does end with the announcement of Luffy versus Imu, and Loki's not in there, I still can't see Loki being done with this fight. We did not spend 1.5 years of publishing time getting this man out of chains for this to be the end of his involvement here. The monarch of the kingdom in question usually has
for sure.
something key to do that
Loki
allows Luffy
is
to win, even
a
if it's
final
like
battle
Momonosuke
type character.
conjuring the flame clouds to carry Onigashima. So Loki, he's not done. But I'm done with him in this chapter review. But before going to Zoro, I'm actually going to go out of order, and head straight to Sanji, because this is the big news of the chapter. Sanji developing Conqueror's Haki may be necessary for Luffy.
Shit.
However, Sanji's dream is more about innovating award-winning flavor, which sadly for him has already been done by the sponsor of today's video.
Fuck you.
Hume is a wondrous little...
I ain't gonna start promoting shit until I get a fucking ad in this shit. I'll probably have to do other type of content, which I'm trying.
Enjoy a full meal plus premium chicken bites for just $7. It's the $7 big deal meal.
It's crazy that we get ads
6 full-size
without skipping anymore.
That calm moment Sanji has to himself contrasted against the rapid chaos of the rain god Zaza demolishing
Who the
village.
fuck? Oh, I heard about her.
And stuff like seeing the desperate face of Ripley as she is powerless to do anything to help her son Colin. Against all of that, Sanji just stops and assesses the situation. He comes up with a total of 3 great problems occurring right now, with 2 of those 3 problems being that women are in despair and he doesn't like seeing women cry. With Sanji admitting to himself that he cannot fight against Zaza because even though she is a dream conjured entity, she is still a woman, which I suspect may annoy some people, as these Sanji situations often do, such as Sanji versus Caliphate during Enies Lobby. When I was reading weekly, I remember that there were ever so many people who were furious with Sanji for not being able to attack her because he's essentially forfeiting Robin's life for his chivalry. I personally disagree with that thought. Chivalry isn't chivalry if there's always a loophole, and the Straw Hats, they are a unit designed to support each other's dreams and beliefs. So when one of them hits a wall, another one steps in to break that wall, as Nami did for Sanji on Enisobi, as well as with Robin and Black Maria on Wano. In this case, I think it's particularly understandable though, because not only does fighting Zaza go against Sanji's beliefs and his principles, but even if it didn't, she is a water type and he is a fire type. It is a bad matchup.
Bruh.
And in the end, would you rather fight a literal god, or would you rather fight the mortal being who the presence of the god is directly tied to? Sanji focusing all of his attention on killing him is objectively the smarter option. And it's an option that Sanji may not have seen without his no-kicking women rule. Because any other crew member walks into this village, they don't casually light up a cigarette and assess the situation. No,
Yep.
they immediately start targeting Zaza because, there's things to be done. Which, unless it's Jinbei we're talking about, he really should be here at the moment, but unless it's him, this
Where
is
is
the wrong
Jinbei?
way to go about this. However, the pressure is still on Sanji to defeat Saint Gilliam as quickly as possible, and Sanji, right now, he cannot do that. But he will be able to, as this chapter gives us the answer to a question that Oda set up in chapter 1152, when Scopogaban mentioned that there was more than one Straw Hat with Conqueror's Haki, with Sanji asking if it was him, but Gaban just starts admonishing Zoro for leaking all of his Conqueror's juices all over the floor. Sanji did later ask Scopogaban again, however, we didn't get to see the end of that conversation because Loki started shouting about things. But in chapter 1187, we do have the continuation of this, with Scopogaban informing Sanji that he has the potential to be a conqueror, which in terms of this being a story means that Sanji is 100% unlocking Conqueror's Haki on Elbaf. I mean, it was already a mandatory requirement.
I would say it'll make sense, or yeah, it'll make sense since they're on a battle island for him to get conquerors. But if he's saying there's potential, I feel like that's probably like a next arc thing, like the middle of a next arc where he actually gets it. Cause I can see him dragging it out like that.
To clear this arc, because Scopogaban also stated that what you need to beat the Holy Knights is Conqueror's Haki. So if Sanji never got it, then as hype as it is to see him fighting St. Gilliam, Sanji could never do any real damage to him. He could never win. And I'm very excited because we do actually have Sanji.
Oh shit, I forgot about this. Hold
Grandline Review 2026 bingo board. However, we will be diligent and wait until the moment that it actually happens to celebrate with Sanji by clearing this square.
Okay. So I'm going to put up another video from the past because I know I talked about this. I remember. I think I wanted New Straw Hat Loki's blind removed. Loki's Devil Fruit. I think I did that one. I got that right. I don't know. Giant Luffy. Yes. I think I got that right. I think I said on that. Gonko Redemption. I don't think we're gonna have that. I think she's going to that. She's going to off herself. Well, she's going to get off technically by older standards. We find out why we shouldn't stay on Elbaf too long. I think I'm right. I think they also said this in the show. Well, somebody pointed this out that time may be different on Elbaf. Like, you got all this shit happening off of Elbaf, which the crew don't know about. And I also like that about One Piece. News not traveling, like they're on, like everybody's on an island. News doesn't travel fast. That's one thing that's love about One Piece. In the in-world news, it don't travel fast. Everything you find out, everything that happens afterwards. We got Luffy versus Emu, if you want to call it that. New cover story. I guess they haven't got that. Loki is free. I think we already have been at that. Someone other than Loki uses Ragnar. I'm starting to think that's the Usopp video that I watched earlier. Herald Truth revealed. Yep. Drew, I don't know who the fuck is. Broken Gonko's backstory. We got that. Well, they got that. I don't know about me. And Usopp's Elbaf moment. I saw that. I hope he has more, because if he's not, that's fucked. I'm not gonna say I'm on the Usopp side. I'm just gonna give him his props. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to call it before Elbath ends, or yeah, before Elbath ends. No Lola proposal background flashback. I don't want to deal with no more flash. I feel like they're done with the flashbacks now. We'll probably get one more, but I don't know about that. By what I've heard and what I've seen, we're getting no. Here's the thing. I want to see the original crew gets Vivi's message, but I feel like we're either going to get the Burn Scar Man reveal or Lola's. No, I don't think we own Lola. I don't know. So it's either the end of Albat for me or Burn Scar Man reveal for the first one, top one. That's Burn Scarville. That's gonna be happening next. I don't know where the fuck and who the fuck Lola is, unless that's that ninja one. Unless it's that person who was supposed to marry Loki. The Asteroid, yes. That's my first kid. That's a big ass maybe. I say depends on what's the past 3 islands. What have they been like? Has somebody returned? Has Law? So that's a high key chance that kid might return because you got to deal with someone like Law. Because we know Law came back multiple times over and over again. For the third role, we got new cover story. Learn why the Holy Land is on fire. I think I got scored on the Holy Land being on fire. I feel like we'll get a new cover story before we get to learn the why. But by what I've seen, yeah, we gonna get the new cover story because they literally just put it out about the Holy Land being on fire. The newest chapter, new character is able to use the Sun God form. Unless he's talking about Bonnie, I don't know where the fuck Bonnie. I know I said I don't want Bonnie and I don't care Bonnie on this island, but that's the only person who I can think of, and I don't know what the fuck Bonnie is at. That's. I feel like that's the new Straw Hat at this point. Gonko's redemption. I don't know shit about Gonko. Mimosa reveal. I mean, you know what? I'm just gonna. You know what? We should think. I'm gonna go with the Masa reveal. But my second hand guess is going to be while we find out we can't stay on Elbath too long. I'm gonna say that's gonna be more Emu. For the fourth point, 2, okay, 3. On the fifth row, it looks like we're getting Sanji's Conqueror's Hockey, so I'm gonna have to go with that one. My second would be Loki's blindfold getting removed. That makes sense. This gotta add a little bit more drama. I don't know who the fuck was react to it.
Yeah, but it's happening. It's happening soon. Now, this is one of those things that I point out, I feel, every week. But I'm very keen to see how the official translates this, because how it's said is quite important. Because there is something that Sanji needs to overcome before he gains access to the Conqueror's goodness. In Japanese, what Scopogaban identifies in Sanji is jigyaku, which can mean masochism, self-deprecation, or even inflicting damage onto oneself, all of which describes Sanji pretty perfectly, in my opinion. I suppose in the opinion of Scopogaban as well. He's the one who said it. But it's theoretically this quality, I don't know if I should call it a quality, it's this that's holding Sanji back from becoming a king and unlocking the Conqueror's Haki, and it does potentially...
Hey, question, now that you say that, what if in the final battle it comes down to Zoro versus Sanji? Luffy is one fight away from winning it all. And there's a woman that's had to fight. Well, Zoro was probably fighting, or Luffy was probably fighting, and then she has control over Sanji. So it comes to Luffy and Zoro. Luffy tells Zoro to go fight Sanji. And before this battle, Sanji told Zoro, hey, if it comes down to it like he did in Wano. I mean, not Wano, Egghead. I think it was Egghead. It was either Wano or Egghead. Sanji told Zoro, hey, I'm about to go into a Pacific mode, or I'm about to get more power, but I'm going to be crazy, so if it comes to it, end them. It's going to be like that before it ends the final battle. And you have Sanji versus Zoro, the final fight. While you have Luffy versus the final boss. The final boss. I feel like that's a great idea. I don't know.
Actually get quite complicated, because one way of reading this, I would say the simplest way possible, is that Sanji lacks self-confidence, which is juxtaposed quite well in particular with this chapter, with Zoro being extremely confident in his matchup against Saint Summers, and Luffy's confidence in taking on Emu. Zoro and Luffy always carry themselves with the utmost of confidence, even if it's unearned, in fact, especially if it's unearned. Whereas Sanji does often falter, he does stop to question himself. However, I would say it's probably less of a lack of self-confidence and more like a lack of self-acceptance. Sanji, he despises his lineage, which I would say is very important in the discussion of becoming a king, because Sanji's lineage is that of a prince. So he's running away from the idea of becoming a king in quite a literal way. But even taking into consideration his character arc from Whole Cake Island and the end of Wano, Sanji still hasn't fully accepted himself. And that's not just demonstrated by things like Sanji getting angry about his family or fearing his genetic modifications. I think it's also shown to us quite clearly in how ridiculously unaware he is of when a woman is genuinely interested in him. Like Charlotte Pudding at the end of Whole Cake Island, or like Osame, the woman with the mouse on Wano. These two characters, as well as Luffy, are the kind of people who see Sanji for who he really is. And without trying to sound too wanky, I don't know if Sanji sees the same person that those three characters see at the moment. I have also seen the simp element being highlighted in discussion this week. There are some people taking this to mean that Sanji humiliates himself far too much when simping for women, so much so that he could never be a conqueror, because what conqueror could be doing this? But I don't think that matters in the grand scheme of things, because Luffy, he humiliates himself regularly, not in the same sort of way that Sanji does, but in other ways. And Luffy is also a king who is always willing to bow to anyone of any social status, such as on Amazon Lily when he gratefully bowed in front of Boa Hancock on behalf of Margarita and the others, which shocked Gloriosa to think that a man with such powerful haki would lower his head so readily and all of that. So I'm really keen to see how Sanji goes about doing this, because I don't think we've ever been able to witness an event like this. I can't think of any character that we've ever seen unlocking Conqueror's haki intentionally. It just happens naturally, which may be why the world believes you have to be born with it, because there's not enough evidence of intentional unlockage. But what Sanji's doing here could prove that anyone has the potential to tap into Conqueror's haki, just like armament and observation, not just the gifted chosen ones, but instead it could be more about those who have the will to become a king. Which, by the way, I haven't mentioned this yet, but the inspiration that Copacabana gives to Sanji is that he needs to become a king in order to make Luffy the Pirate King, which is something that Zoro has known from the very beginning. Luffy and Zoro's partnership was premised on becoming the world's greatest swordsman and the Pirate King respectively. They were going to rise to the very top together. And now it is finally time for Sanji to get on board with this as well. Because you thought that Elbaf was going to be Usopp's arc. Nah mate, absolutely not. It is Brook's arc, it is Sanji's arc, it's even kind of Frankie's arc.
So it's a fuck you arc.
For Usopp. And you know what? I don't even hate that anymore, because at the very least, so many other Straw Hats are getting some good focus that we don't normally get. And also, it's not lost on me that the cover of this chapter, the one with Reiju and the ducks who are styled like Judge, Ichiji, Niji, Sanji, and Yonji, Sanji was probably done with this timing in mind, because despite how the chapter begins and ends, I feel like the emphasis of 1187 is very much on Sanji. But just before the Sanji stuff, we do have what I would call a classic Zoro scene, having a pre-fight chat with his opponent, Saint Summers, and having just described Sanji as a masochist, Zoro, he is the exact opposite. He is quite the sadist, and he is the only Straw Hat who likes to spend time doing what I suppose we'll call playing with his food. This whole section with Zoro and Summers, it's like battle foreplay to Zoro, and he does this a lot. One of my favorite examples of which was during the era when the Straw Hats were on the clock because they needed to find the key to unlock Robin's handcuffs. But even then, Zoro, yeah, whatever. He just casually strolls into Kaku's room with this demonic grin on his face, and they had an exchange of words where Zoro stated that his sword was moaning for the taste of blood. And this is also how you know that Zoro is about to enter a serious fight, because he is visualizing his defeated opponent before it actually happens. And that's also a trait of his samurai influence. Before battle, samurai would often write poetry about slaying their enemies as a form of mental preparation, which is exactly what Zoro does. And more often than not, Zoro's opponents, they kind of flirt back with him. They're just as confident as he is, like Haku was during Enisobi and how Summers is now. However, the difference with this scene is that Zoro wasn't threatening or visualizing Summers directly. He was actually visualizing Sanji's success in defeating Saint Gillingham. And the word that Zoro uses in Japanese is kutabaru, meaning to die or to drop dead in an expressive way, kind of like saying kick the bucket in English. And I mention this because some translations make it sound like Zoro is claiming that Sanji is gonna, just like kill Gillingham, which is very unlikely to happen. I just think that this is Zoro's standard demonic pre-fight language. Gillingham and Summers may end up dying before this arc is over, but I would be very surprised if Zoro and Sanji were directly responsible for taking their lives. The way I see it potentially happening right now is more like what happened with Saint Saturn, where his life was revoked. Although the other point here would be to highlight the trust that Zoro has in Sanji. This is always good to see. I loved this little exchange with Zoro and Summers both talking about their colleagues with the utmost faith in them. It's pretty much the only case scenario where you won't see Zoro shitting all over Sanji. And so I'm very much looking forward to these fights beginning imminently. More so Luffy versus Imu, to be honest, then Sanji versus Gillingham, with Zoro versus Summers lingering in a solid third preference. And I don't know if what I'm about to say is a good thing or not, but right now, our final fights and this climax in general is starting to remind me of the One Piece movies. The standard trend in almost every One Piece film is that the final fights consist of Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji getting an opponent, but because the movie hasn't had the chance to develop many other characters, there's not enough villains left for the rest of the crew to deal with, and so they get assigned with busy work elsewhere. Like how half the crew on Elbaf currently ganging up on an ice cube. And I think that part of this is because Summers in Gillingham, as interested as I am in Gillingham's ability, and as invested as I am
we have not seen nothing about Gonko or Brook.
Humanity, even with the Omen boost, the two of them still don't feel to me like they're worthy of being Zoro and Sanji level opponents, which is the same feeling that I always get in the One Piece films. Zoro and Sanji, they get paired up against some scrubs who we just met an hour ago, and they usually lack that sort of dramatic weight. The dramatic weight that your kings and your queens had on Wano, or even Zoro versus Rob Lucci on Egghead.
Chewy Pharmacy delivers pet meds quick.
We'll give a commercial sooner or later.
Because he has a need for speed.
YouTube has commercials now. Crazy. We'll start skipping it.
And in the later One Piece movies, there's always some sort of colossal creature that's threatening to destroy everyone and everything, like the final form of guilt to Zoro, Douglas Bullett's crazy Mecha Island, or Top Musica in Film Red, which is the same sort of feeling I get from Zaza on Elbaf right now. Not that any of that is necessarily a bad thing, it's just interesting to me that the manga is starting to replicate the pattern of the movies. However, Luffy versus Imu is definitely doing most of the heavy lifting in terms of hype, and that is going to be tricky. Because there's no antagonist serving under Imu.
Me, editor. What we're gonna do? We're gonna do favorite One Piece movies, favorite Naruto movies, and favorite Bleach movies.
Who can compare to Imu himself, maybe aside from Shamrock.
Whatever role you can do.
So Summers and Gillingham are always going to be treated as more of an undercard fight. It's nice to see, but it's not why we're here. And Echiro Oda, he knows this. Because this chapter ends with something I'm not sure if I've ever seen Oda do before. The last 2 pages, they have Gear 5th Luffy and Imu facing off. And Oda writes in his big block text like an announcement state Emu Nerona versus Monkey D. Luffy. Oda has written fights down before in his classic Oda boxes, usually as check-ins or to state the results though, but he's made Luffy versus Emu feel like the first time in almost 30 years of publication that we've seen a fight worthy of this sort of importance, this grand introduction. I suppose this could be what happens when two gods clash, and we might see further grand text introductions as more gods emerge and start clashing with one another in the future. My curiosity here though is all about names. What's really amazing is that Oda uses Luffy's name. It is Monkey D. Luffy, it's not Joy Boy, and it's not Nika, which are the two names that Emu so far has used for Luffy. And I'm even more curious now to understand when and why Emu chooses to use certain names. Because the first time he encountered Luffy in the silhouette form, he called him Nika. And now in the Nerona Emu form, he's calling Luffy Joy Boy. Neither of which Luffy appreciates, but it may add something to the idea that Nerona Emu and the Silhouette Emu are not necessarily the same entity, which is something that we've speculated on before because they do have quite different personalities, and if Nerona Emu was originally one of the 20 kings, then who or what did he make a covenant with to achieve the power that he has today? So if the Silhouette was a more ancient entity that Nerona Emu made the pact with, then that could explain why the Silhouette sees Luffy as Nika, whilst Nerona Emu, who had a personal relationship with Joy Boy, sees Luffy as Joy Boy. Either way, Luffy's not accepting any of that. I'm incredibly excited for this fight to continue next week, but for now, you let me know what you thought.
Y'all think it's like an Attack on Titan thing? Where they made a deal with the Yoo-Hoo or the Yudu? Oh, Jesus Christ. I'm not reacting to wrestling. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. I'm not. Cause it's all, I promise you, that's what it is most of the time. Every time I do a reaction to a wrestling video, the video wrestling video is long as fuck. And the problem is I can do it. It's just I promise you the amount of times I'm going to fucking pause that motherfucker because there's so much shit I know I won't talk about because I'm keeping flashbacks of it. I'm gonna have to do it when I'm sober. We'll do it when I'm sober. So we just gonna end this one right here, and it's already it's 41 fucking minutes. We're gonna do a song after this. It was a great video. Thank you, Grandline. If you love the video, see y'all later. Bye.
I've been in such a dry spell lately, I've been feeling rabid. I don't care if you got BPD, ADHD, no college degree, and can't function without THC. As long as you're willing to bounce cheeks on me and free of STDs, there's no letter in the alphabet stopping me from putting my meat in between.